fellow riders coming up alongside of me. Gives me the little wave. I think that's a BMW. That's what it looked like. Just doing my commute home tonight. It's October 12th. It was a little chilly this morning, but it's really nice right now. Probably about mid-60s. So in about 10 days, I will be back at MSF class. MSF, Motorcycle Safety Foundation. They have classes nationwide for motorcycle safety. So it's been about 14 months, a year and a couple months since I had my original class, which was Basic Rider Course, BRC. And I'll be back next weekend for BRC 2, which is supposed to be much of the same stuff as the first class, but you're doing it on your own motorcycle. And it's just a little more involved, no classroom, just out on the riding range, which is basically a big parking lot with some lines and cones and stuff. So what was the original class like? I mean, if you go online and post in a motorcycle forum that you want to start riding, or that you just started riding, immediately you're going to get people telling you take the MSF class. And some people speak really highly of it. I definitely would recommend taking it. I understand that in some states it can be pretty expensive, like $300. Here in Pennsylvania, it's totally free. I mean, they really make it easy for you to get on a bike here. It costs $10 to get your motorcycle permit, and then you can sign up for the MSF class. You don't have to have anything except boots, gloves, and long sleeves. They give you a bike to use, a helmet, and it is really great, that you can find out if bike, riding is for you or not without having to really spend any money. So I had a lot of expectations about the MSF class because of all the good stuff I heard people say about it, but my particular experience was not really great. It was just definitely disappointing. First of all, there are 2 evenings, I think ours was on a Wednesday, in a classroom, 2 hours each. They have a book. One week we did the first half of the book, the second week we did the second half. The instructor that we had was very uninspiring. My first job was as a training instructor, and I've been involved in training and public speaking my whole life ever since. And honestly, I could have stayed home and just read the book and gotten as much as I got out of the class. There was really nothing extra offered, and that really surprised and disappointed me. And then on top of that, the rest of the people in the class, I think there's like 12 of us, let's face it, they can really contribute or not. And it was just a dud group of people. I don't know why, but they just didn't contribute to making it a really great experience in my book. And I've been to training where the other students really do make it great, but it wasn't the case here. So we just went, read the stuff in the book, answered the questions, read more, answered the questions. We had a test at the end of the second classroom evening. I got them all right. The instructor told me I was the only one to get them all right, which I kind of chuckled at. I did study ahead of time. That's just the way I always approach things. Definitely recommend that. So anyway, that was the classroom portion of it. And the first day on the range, I think it was 9 to 12 or 9 to 1. I don't remember exactly. The riding range was at a high school, big parking lot. Like I said, things painted on the ground. And you go from sitting on the bike, getting off the bike, what do the switches do? How do you start it? How do you turn it off? And then finally putting it in first gear and just kind of walking with it, straddling it across the lot and back, and then, riding it out and back, and how to turn it, how to brake, how, all that stuff, and building blocks. And that part of it was good. I mean, I couldn't have done that without the class, so I was very glad for that. And at the end of the 2 days on the range, I now could, had ridden a motorcycle, at least up to 25 miles an hour. So that was good. The things that they taught and then tested you on were things like panic stopping, panic braking, having to stop very quickly, having to swerve to get out of the way of something. One of the dreaded things was doing basically a figure 8 inside of a square box without going outside of the lines. Another thing that could be challenging was going down a straightaway and then going into a curve where it was about as wide as a sidewalk, maybe like 3 feet wide, and you had to stay within the lines. And you had to be doing a decent, moderate amount of speed. So, I just found the instructions for this is what you're going to do weren't the greatest. They demonstrated it, thankfully. But the real kicker for me was not really getting to practice this stuff very much. I mean, the box, I think I did maybe 3 times. And the go down the straightaway into the turn, I think I did twice, and that was it. And I told the instructor, I really would like to practice this a few more times. It was like, nope, no go, and then we were being tested on it. So, that was like, wow, okay, didn't see that coming. And let's see, I said there was 12 of us. I think 2 of the people in the class already had their permit and had been riding. That's something that I find really interesting, is you can get a permit and boom, you can ride. The only restrictions are no night riding, no passengers, and you have to wear a helmet, which, I would do anyway. But you can go for a year without having a license in Pennsylvania. So anyway, those 2 people, obviously no issue, they had riding experience. The remaining 10 of us, our first times riding, everybody seemed to pick it up quickly. There was one person who I pegged 5 minutes into the first night in the classroom. Should not be on a motorcycle. Way bad attitude, all the wrong reasons, arrogant, haughty, sorry to say, and it was a woman. Not that that's a problem, because there were other females in the class that did fine. But this lady, I don't want to say too much more, because, I just don't want to embarrass anybody, but shouldn't be on a bike. And within 5 minutes of us being on a bike the first day, she dropped it hard, and so she went home. She came back for the second time on the range, and again, 10 minutes, boom, went down hard. So I hope she rethought things, including the attitude, and I hope she took another try at it and was able to succeed, because I hate to see people fail. But not that time, not that class. So anyway, her aside, everybody did well. And when it came to the actual test, I don't know what the criteria was, but I made a fair amount of mistakes. I would have failed myself, personally. I always hold myself to a high standard to begin with. When the very last thing I had to do was that ride down the straightaway and into the curve thing, and I told myself, if you don't absolutely do this perfectly, you're done. They're not going to pass you. And I did do it perfectly. And even then, I was still unsure. And I was quite surprised when they're like, congratulations, you're a motorcycle rider. I'm like, wow, okay. And other people made mistakes also during the test, and I thought, wow, they're not going to pass. And they did. So I don't really know what the system was there. But I will say this. Aside from those 2 people that had riding experience, I don't think any of us were now qualified to go out on public streets after that class. I knew that. I hope they knew that. They handed me my paperwork. I was officially licensed. I got in my car and drove 100 miles and took a look at this bike, which I then put a deposit on. I wanted to test ride it, but I knew I was not qualified to get on this bike and ride it, especially since I didn't even own it. So, you know, when I did get it home, a friend of mine wrote it for me, and I got it home. That night, I went out and just did what I did in the class. You know, started out slow, started riding, shifting gears, and next thing I knew, I was riding around my community, stopping and starting. And I just kept doing that every night. I mean, it was August, the weather was fine. And I did that every night after work. And then, of course, when the weekend came, I mean, I couldn't wait to get on this thing. And I was running low on gas, so I had to venture out to the gas station eventually, which was my first time on public roads. But anyway, you start small, you build on your skills, and even now, I mean, there's still things I want to do better at, which is part of the reason why I'm going back to the class. So anyway, my MSF experience was disappointing in the sense that I just felt it could have been better. But I'll say this, I learned, I found out what my weaknesses were and worked on them after the class. And, you know, that's always a good thing. I mean, learning is about really knowing where you're not doing well and making corrections. So I guess it did allow me that opportunity. So, you know, it's hard to put into words why I was disappointed with it, but it is what it is. It was where you start. I definitely would recommend anyone start there. And if your experience leaves you a little disappointed, it really doesn't matter, because you can keep practicing those things that they taught you. And they said that, you know, come back to this riding range, you know, practice on these boxes and cones and things that we have here. I actually did try to do that, which was the subject of an earlier vlog, but unfortunately it had just been paved. So the lines were gone. But the MSF class we're taking on the weekend, me and my friend Josh, is out in a different area. So no issues there, just a little further away. Anyway, that's what's going on. That was my experience with MSF, and I'm curious what other people thought about it. Feel free to post that in the comments. I think this vlog was primarily for people who haven't taken it yet. I know when I was getting ready to take it, I was looking on YouTube and looking for people's experiences and things. As far as, you know, how to approach it and how to succeed, you know, I didn't really talk about that, but like I mentioned, studying the book ahead of time, no brainer. I mean, you should definitely do that. As far as riding goes, I actually was out practicing on my mountain bike, counter steering, and trying to keep myself upright at the slowest speed, you know, by using trail braking, you know, all the things that you'll learn in the class and online. So, you know, you can do things like that to practice ahead of time and just, you know, focus, make the most of it, you know, just you and the bike, shut everything else out, pay attention to what the instructor's telling you. If you don't accomplish, you know, you don't do an exercise well, just shake it off and do it again. And, you know, one thing that's important is to relax, not be all tense. You know, when I was feeling like I'm blowing this test and I've got to nail this last thing, you know, you can overthink something, you can be too tense and all that. So you got to have control of your nerves and all that. So, you know, those are things to think about. But anyway, you know, don't put too much pressure on it. It can be a very enjoyable thing. So that was my MSF experience. And after this year's BRC2, I want to go back next year for the advanced rider class, ARC. And I just want to keep going from there. You know, there's Ride Like a Pro classes and other things like that. I would like to keep improving my skills so that if there is ever a time where I'm going to need every ounce of skill to, you know, safely get out of a situation, I want all those odds in my favor. So I hope you do too. So that's it for now. Till next time.